Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by Nate Weitzer. He's on the East Coast. And we've got game 3 of the NBA Finals, 2-0 for the Celtics. As we know, heading back to Dallas now. We're going to be looking at best bets in this episode. Also have play of props specifically up in a separate video for you guys and bringing you both of those each and every day that we have NBA hoops moving forward. So continue to follow along, subscribe to that page. Also want you to head to thelines.com. Plenty of NBA content going up on the site right now as we continue along in this NBA championship series. So check all of that out. For now, Nate, let's go ahead and jump right into your first best bet here for game 3.
Yeah, I will take the Celtics money line in the first half. And I mean, if I'm not going to argue with you if you want to take plus money for them to just win and pretty much close this thing. They are clearly the better team. But plus 120 for the first half at DraftKings is pretty juicy considering they've been an historically good first half team, right? And Dallas has often gotten off to these slow starts. I know they're going to be desperate, but I'm not like willing to take the more desperate team comes out at home angle and like, you know, first quarter Dallas, second quarter Dallas, they're going to come out on fire. It's the wrong kind of desperate, if you will. Like it's the Jason Kidd trying to throw shade into the Celtics locker room and like try all these indicate all these desperate things with his rotation already. And like admitting that they are not as good as this Boston Celtics team. And so from jump, you've really seen in the eyes of some of these Mavs players, like a lot of doubt, right? Everyone but Luka, it seems like, just didn't really have it in terms of their confidence. PJ Washington came to play in game 2. That was about it. So I don't know if they're going to be able to come out and throw haymakers. I do know the Celtics, they're also desperate in the sense that they just want to, that a lot of these guys have tasted so much defeat 2 years ago. And that's what we saw is no let up really in game 2 in terms of their effort. And I mean, what we did see a let up is like shot regression for them, not shooting very well, but they were still able to pull out the win, obviously riding the spirit of Drew Holiday to just get a muddy win there. But in the first half, in these playoffs, they're 13-2-1, the 2 being ties. So they've only been trailing once at halftime in these playoffs. That was the Andrew Nembhard left his body game without Halliburton. And I guess that's the same situation here. It is a game 3 going back 2-0. But I just don't think that this Mavericks offense, aside from what we've seen from Luka, is humming very well. Certainly not. I mean, they for the entire playoffs have not even been as efficient at home, especially in the first half, a 1.5 assist to turnover ratio. They've been under 55, which, you know, I'm looking at their team total under as well here, which is 55 in 7 of 8 home playoff games. They're averaging 52. Their turnover rate in those games is only better than Miami and New Orleans, who are obviously pretty much as swept out of here. And the Celtics road defense has been even better on the road. So you say, like, yes, there should be some positive regression. Kyrie should not be so dreadful. Everybody besides Luka should not continue to miss their threes. But I don't know if it's going to happen that early. I mean, I think you can put a very small unit on the Celtics halftime and then the Mavs full time, which is plus 700 for the Mavs to pull this out down the stretch. You can also just live bet that, right? And just be like, oh, the Mavs are down at halftime. Now I can get them plus 5 or whatever. But I think, yeah, the Celtics, like, you look no further than last game where they shot 3 for 15. They were still up. Tatum was 2 for 9. Jaylen Brown had 4 turnovers, was not very efficient in that first half, and they didn't get the crazy Porzingis spike, and Porzingis now is hobbled, and they might not have that, which is a bit concerning. But, like, despite all that, to still be up at halftime shows you that they can do this in multiple ways, and that they can do it with their defense, and that's why it's worth the juice here at plus 120.
It's fair. I want to be very clear. Kristaps strongly expects to play too, so yeah. I think he's going to be in there. It's what he said. He's not a doctor, but it did seem like even the doctors, the team, specialists weren't necessarily saying he's out or that he's even questionable at this point. You don't want to just assume that when a player says, "No, I'm for sure playing," that you have to cut my leg off to make me miss it. Like, all right, well, it ain't the 70s. This ain't Willis Reed, and like the doctors have more of a say nowadays. But still, I think he's good to go. He's such a game changer. But just to touch on at least a little bit of what you were talking about here, I agree that I'm not ready to say, oh, because this team is down 2-0, they're going to come out like, a cat in a cage that's just like scratching and clawing. Like, there might be some of that throughout the game, but I still think it's going to be a poised sort of, performance for Dallas. And like, look, man, what it comes down to is like, is Kyrie scoring? Because if he's not, is there anybody else is there a combination of like 2 to 3 other guys that can account for his stuff? Because you got to get PJ at about 15 points. Like PJ Washington has to be their third scorer, getting about 15 points. That means that if Kyrie's not getting 20 to 25, 2 other dudes are going to have to do that and combine to sort of go well and above what they do. I don't want to have to bank on that. So there are a lot more outs for how the Celtics win this thing. They're just straight up a better team. But I do think we're going to get a little bit more from the others on Dallas coming back home. I know that sounds obvious to say, but like it's been so stark how bad they've been on the road in this series so far that there's really nowhere to go but up. So I'm going to go to an under in the quarter number 4 here. I was considering strongly an under at 213 on this total. I really thought this was finally going to get down to like 208, 209 and drop like 4 or 5 points, like it from the totals that it was in the first 2 games. Still at 213. I just think that's too high. But part of the reason I think that's too high is because the second half slows down the way it does in the finals. Things tighten up. There's levels to this stuff, like we've said, and the level of NBA Finals is an even more sort of like, suckering, if you will, sort of moment in time for everybody. So I'm going to take the fourth quarter under at 51.5. I also strongly lean and might have a little bit on the under of the game at 213. But like I said, it really comes down to this fourth quarter. Now, I want to be clear. So game 1, we had a 44-point quarter, 88 pace. Kairuka came out, both of them at the same time at the 6:43 mark. We know that kid waved the white flag halfway through that fourth quarter, down about 20, 21 points. They entered the fourth quarter down 21 points. At the same time, Tatum and Derek White played 9:20 in that quarter, and other guys like Jaylen Brown and Drew Holiday a little bit less, like 7 minutes, 6 minutes, whatever. But they still had their key guys out there. They were running down the clock, but that is also how it goes in the fourth quarter. Part of this whole like psyche is I can't take a bad shot in the fourth quarter. There's a lot of guys who are going to be afraid to shoot it at that point in the game. It's not going to be free flowing. You're going to need your 2 stars on each side of the ball to really do their thing. Then go to game 2 though. 9-point game going into the fourth, 46 points scored in that one. A little bit faster pace of 94, in part because Dallas was like, well, we still got a chance at this thing, so let's like try to get our points. They really did have a chance at that thing until PJ Washington got shoved in the back, but I'm not here. I don't even really care about that. No one here is going to say Dallas lost because of that. It would have just been really nice if the refs gave us an even more dramatic ending, but that's neither here nor there. If that did go in, I still think we're going under, by the way. It's a 46-point quarter, but the normal rotations were there. So I think we still kind of understand what we're looking at here. I would project this if we have an actual game within 10 points again going into the fourth quarter. I'd still project this at about a 90, 91 pace or so, which has been the average in the fourth quarter for them so far in this series. As a whole, I've gone over this fourth quarter stuff, especially in the finals. I'm still surprised this hasn't gone down from 51.5, and you can still get minus 118 for going under. On FanDuel, by the way, it is a 50.5 fourth quarter total. So we are getting an extra point there with some still pretty decent juice on DraftKings. So I would consider that. One thing I wanted to talk about too that's relevant to this is like Daniel Gafford or Derek Lively look like they're going to be on the floor, and it seems like it would be Daniel Gafford. I think Derek Lively, if he shows a little bit more in the first 3 quarters, we'll have more time on the floor in the fourth quarter. But at this point, for betting on those centers, it's just a matter of all I know is one of them will be on the floor in key moments, and they're not going to just go completely small, regardless of if Kristaps is out there. In fact, with Kristaps a little bit more hobbled, it seems like they're happy to go to bigs on Dallas's side to really have that dominating force and be able to sort of have that best center on the floor kind of thing, the way that Gafford was playing last time. It could be either of them, but we're going to have one of them. And the reason I think that's relevant here is because Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are passing on their drives more than they ever have. I mean, during the regular season, Tatum was at about 32% of his drives that he would end with a pass. Now in the playoffs, he's above 55%. And that's in this series specifically. In the last 2 games, he's been up above 55% on average now. And Jaylen Brown is the same concept. And so I think you have to keep them out there, which obviously slows things down and also limits you to have another shooter on the floor that you can rely on for points. So with the fact that I do believe that all this is going to continue, you look at the finals last year and the year before, which we've talked about, and how low those point totals are, both under 50, 48, 46 points per game in the fourth quarter in the last 2 finals series. And I think that's going to continue to be the case as everybody sort of tightens up, and the Mavs really want to make sure they get a methodical, good shot in their offense.
Yeah, I don't think the Mavs have been over 24 points in a second half quarter in this series, right? So I mean that's part of the equation. That's an issue here. I expect some positive regression. We expected some positive regression in game two from this Mavs offense. That's not to say that it won't still slow down. Like if the Mavericks have a lead, and because of that regression, and then they start to really lock in defensively and smell that they can get this win and get back in the series. Like I do think we'll get some more disciplined defense that we've seen over and over. Right, Boston struggling to close in close games. I mean, only 21.5 points in the fourth quarter in the first two here, 23 in the playoffs, even when they've been way up or if they have gotten into some tight games. So they've really depended on the other team, being unable to execute their crunch time offense, which is why they were able to beat Indiana in 3 crunch time games, right? But I think Dallas maybe a little bit better, which is why I am going to go back to this bet over both teams over 101. It is 1 point higher than it would have been for game two because the total is a little higher. The individual team totals are higher, but I mean, this absolutely should have hit because you mentioned the PJ Washington push in the back that was not called. And most likely then it's a 100-103 game and we're at least playing the free throw game down the stretch.
Right.
And Dallas actually opted not to play the free throw game with like 30 seconds left anyway, when they could have gotten to 100. And that's not to say anything about what happened leading up to that throughout this game, which was both teams just bricking a ton of open threes. I mean, Boston's shot quality has been so good in terms of like what they've generated. 18 open threes per game. They're only shooting 10 for 30 overall on catch and shoot threes. That seems like it'll still be there. Dallas is shooting 25% on open threes. And non-Luka guys now 5 for 41 from three in this entire series, which is just, not something you would expect to continue, whether they played a third straight game in Boston or not, but they're not. They're coming back home, and role players are going to be a little more comfortable for sure. Boston might not be quite as buttoned up with those rotations and executing the defensive game plan, although they've just been fantastic. And yeah, the Porzingis injury once again is a thing that I think would affect defensively when he's out there for his 20-25 minutes. Dallas is going to have a much easier time if he's not at full strength, because we saw like you're not getting anything at the rim against this dude who looked like the best rim protector in the league, and had the best field goal percentage against, right, all season. And that just like disrupting everything for Kyrie in terms of like what's up with him. Well, he's afraid to actually go all the way in, and usually that's such a key part of his game. But don't expect Kyrie to have 3 bad games in a row. Do expect, Luka to continue doing his thing in isolation, and the others to kind of come along for Dallas. And that's why 100 points is not that much, even though I am thinking Dallas is not going to have a great first half. I do think they can finally get over that 25-point hump in the third or fourth quarter and make this a game down the stretch.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think both teams come out pretty well, to be honest, and I do think Dallas will be fine. Like, I have no qualms with it because, like I said, I prefer an under, but there's a lot of wiggle room between both teams getting 102 points and this thing not going to 213, right? So we can definitely both be right. Once again, my stuff comes a lot from the fourth quarter and what we think of that, but there's going to be so much that's dependent on the actual game flow of how this, like, what's the margin and the spread throughout the game. Are we keeping this thing inside 10 points all the way around? Hopefully, for sure, because then we can actually rely on some of this game theory that we're putting out there. So we'll see how that goes, but I have no qualms with it. Minus 110, we lose a little bit. It's really just like you said, it's something that should have hit already. So if things stay somewhat status quo in a lot of parts and actually just do regress positively the way they're supposed to, and should according to averages, then this should still hit as well. But I'm going to close it out in the best bets video here with an SGP going back to the Luka and Tatum rebounding deal. Now, it's the head-to-head prop that I took last game where I took over combined rebounds for both Tatum and Luka hit, but it's losing a little bit of juice. It's up to 19.5. I do think they're both good still to get 20 total combined, but the way I'm playing this is 8 boards for Tatum, 8 boards for Luka, and I threw the 3 threes in there for Luka as well, because that's just seems like death and taxes, that level of certainty at this point for that man, who's going to be putting up anywhere from 10 to 13 threes moving forward throughout this series, especially as the only one who's hitting any for that squad. He had 4 of their 6 threes again, like that's 2 games in a row. So if you want the numbers on it, it's really simple. It's Jason Tatum get rebounds because of where he is on the floor, and same for Luka. And Tatum is actually not the same in the sense that he's not playing off the ball the way that he was. He's actually still very involved in defensive action because he's guarding centers who are so heavily involved in the action for that Dallas offense, the way the amount that they run that pick and roll, as we know. So with him playing on bigger guys and needing to sort of chase them as they roll to the rim, well, now he's moving towards where the shot's going to go up, right? Or where it's going to land if it doesn't go in. He's running right towards the rim to defend a guy. He's also had pretty good success boxing out in general. That's why they're comfortable with Tatum guarding bigs. I mean, the freaking 6'10" with those long arms, like he's strong enough to box guys like Gafford out anyway, but and Lively even more so, I would say. So for him in the rebounds, like this is something he's done all playoffs. He failed to get 10 in the last game. He got 9, as we know, but at the same time, he's still gotten 8 pretty much every game in this playoffs. There's been 3 that he has not at this point gotten 8 boards. And like we've talked about, he's actually better getting rebounds with Kristaps Porzingis and Al Horford playing rather than the inverse. You'd think that maybe there was some negative correlation between the presence of his centers on the floor, but it's not, especially because of the way that they have these matchups, as I continue to go back to. He's at about 14 rebound chances per game, at 10.5 boards per game still. Gotten the 8, like I said, now in 13 of 16 games. Or I'm sorry, 14 of 16 games, actually. I'm not giving him enough credit. And then for Luka, same things. The rebound chance percentage is so high for them. Luka's now gotten at least this many boards in, I believe, his last 8. Yeah, and like basically 10 of his last 12. And really the only time he wasn't getting the boards was when he was injured versus the Clippers. As far as the threes go, I already told you what the deal is with Luka. Also, you can really just kind of trim his stats and filter out the Clippers games at the beginning of that series when he was truly walking around on one leg. And like also using that as my like barometer for, is Luka actually hurt? I'm sure he's hobbled right now. I don't want to hear this. I wouldn't be playing in the regular season if it wasn't the playoffs. Like, maybe that's fine. It doesn't matter. He's here, and the rebounds aren't like he's out jumping people and like hustling all the way out of bounds to save a ball and get a rebound. Like his rebounds are nobody else is around him. And because the Celtics, especially the way they play, obviously, especially without KP in there, it's 5 out, right? There's really nobody ever inside the rim. So there's none of his players inside guarding guys down low, and he's not really guarding anybody down low. He's just got the corner, and then as soon as the ball goes up, he's coming in to get the ball on the baseline. So a lot of available rebounds for him. I'll continue to take his boards. You can still get over 9.5 for Luka. I'm good with that. But this little SGP gets you minus 101 on FanDuel and has been something that's hit in a near like 83% rate. So I'm going to keep going back to it for even money.
Yeah, this is what I was trying to convince you on with instead of the head-to-head total, which did just fine. I mean, it hit for sure. They got 20 combined, but I'm like, well, we could take 8 and 8 or 8 and 10. I guess if we trusted Luka more, it would have come home because Tatum, eventually came up just short of that 10 rebounds, the triple-double. But Luka's actually had 3 threes in the first half in 6 of his last 7, right? So I don't think that's a huge leap for us in terms of him getting 3 for the entire game. So nice conservative parlay here.
Yeah, even money, man. Like this is a situation now moving forward where I don't want to have to guess which role player is going to step up. I just want to bet on the guys I know are going to have 30% usage, etc. Right, and the ball in their hands for that amount of time. So that is all the time though that we have for you in this one. Continue to follow along and subscribe to that page. Check out the Play a Props specific video that we have up for you as well, alongside these best bets every day that we've got NBA Finals action moving forward. And until we see you next, happy betting.